Hey, this is Clint from CT Mad Mods, and today I'm pulling the transfer case out of my Suzuki Samurai. I haven't been looking forward to this day, but the last time I pulled my transfer case, whenever I put it back together, apparently I didn't seal it up good enough, and it's been leaking for about 2 or 3 weeks, but it's been raining for at least 2 of those weeks, so I've just been waiting for a day where the clouds break and it's dry enough to do this in my driveway, so come along for the adventure. As you can see, it's leaving some oil spots in my driveway, and you can see it's all oily down here. Something's leaking up there, so about to pull it out and find out what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and drain the oil, and then I'm gonna go up top and start taking the drive lines out of this thing. Don't know why I need to drain the oil. It's been draining out for 2 or 3 weeks now. Magnet don't look too bad. A little bit of stuff on it, but oil don't look too bad because I keep adding it. As you can see, there's a lot of oil coming out, and I think it's coming from that little intermediate shaft. So it might just be the O-ring, but if I'm gonna pull this thing, I might as well just pull it and reseal everything. Go ahead and take these bolts off from my drive shaft and take the other drive shaft bolts off. Pull the sucker out. All right, got it out. You can see this thing is just pouring oil out. And it kind of looks like, I don't know, kind of looks like maybe it's coming out of this intermediate shaft maybe, I don't know. All right, I got it out, and I'm gonna start taking this thing apart. Just gotta remove all these bolts. Got the transfer case apart. Just kind of set everything aside. Everything looks good. Whoever installed the gears in this did that, I noticed that this has actually been, it's just silicone. So I don't know if that's the leak, but what I'm about to do is I'm gonna clean that up real good, and I'm gonna JB weld it. I think they cut too far in there, but I don't think that's the leak. I think it's coming from the intermediate shaft, so I'm gonna change the O-ring on that as well. But this looks like a potential problem, so let me clean it up, JB weld it, and I'll come back. I got that thing cleaned up. Look at that hole. That's the gray silicone that came out of it. Just didn't notice it, so I'll JB weld that sucker back up, fill it with some JB weld, and hopefully that clears that issue up. I'm not sure if that's where it was leaking, but I'm sure it isn't helping the situation. I put a bolt in there and just about bottomed it out. I put grease on the end of it. I'm gonna fill that sucker with some JB weld, and I'll bring you back in a minute. I've got that JB welded. My gear misses it by a mile. So I'm gonna let that dry 4 to 6 hours. Start putting this thing back together. My JB weld is drying nicely. It's a few hours later. I let that JB weld get hard in there, and I had a bolt in there to just make sure that I would be able to put this in later and it wouldn't break the JB weld or whatever. But you can see I've got plenty of room there. So there was 8-to-1 gears in this at one time, and you have to clearance the case. And so whoever did the clearance on the case for the 8-to-1 gears, they clearanced a little too far, and that had gray silicone in it. And I guess, you know, taking the bolts in and out probably messed that silicone up and that RTV, and so it busted through. And I think that's what was leaking. All the seals are brand new. I just put all new seals in, and I know you can cut seals, but I don't think the seals are cut. They all look good. So I'm gonna slap this thing back together. It's a relatively simple process. It's just hard to do with greasy hands. I can't film it. But the gears all slap in there, and then you just put silicone or RTV or whatever. I'm using some of this Right stuff. Stuff works really good. And I'm actually gonna use a gasket. Randy Gibbs told me that that's shim, so I'm gonna throw the gasket on this time. Everything looks good, everything's clean, everything's dry, so I'm putting her back together. All right, this is a couple minutes later, and I got the front case on. Tighten all these up. Make sure you put that ball bearing back in there, or you'll have a twin stick. And don't lose that ball bearing. Mine's in that little hole over there. But just going back together. Got it all back together. I'm about to bench press this thing back underneath here and get it all bolted back up. Hook my drive lines back up, stick some oil in it, and I'm gonna let it sit for a little while before I put some oil in it. Actually, maybe tomorrow I'll put oil in it, but put some JB weld in that little hole, and it looks like it's holding, so we'll see what happens. Man, I've been dealing with a leak for weeks, so I'm done with that. It's time for this thing to be 100%, so. Alright, almost there. One more bolt. There it is. Hoop, there it is. All right. Just put my transfer case back in, and me and Ronan are taking it for a test drive. Seems to be working great so far. No clunks. Actually, everything looked really good inside there whenever I took it apart. Fine. What you think, Ronan? Did we do a good job or what? Don't hear anything catastrophic. I've had this transfer case apart about 5 or 6 times. When I first got it, it had an 8-to-1 gear, and I did a couple of launches in a parking lot because it was losing bearing or something. So I did a couple of launches to figure out what it was, and I smoked that gear bad. And as you saw, whoever put the 8-to-1 gear in when they clearanced the case, they went a little too far into that one bolt hole, the mounting bolt hole, and I guess it was leaking out of there. But I don't know, it could have been that intermediate shaft. It was it has an O-ring, and so maybe that O-ring wasn't sealing. I put a little RTV on it whenever I put it back together. Cleaned everything up real good, brought it to the car wash, made sure that everything was clean, and I guess we'll see here in the next couple of days. So, well, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching me pull the transfer case apart again. I hope I never have to do that again in the near future. But Shannon, in our tracker group, Shannon sent me a message earlier and asked me if I'd put a gear in her transfer case if she took it out. So I don't mind taking transfer cases apart. I'm getting a little too old to be putting transfer cases in on the ground, even though this one only weighs like 30 pounds. Thanks for watching my video. Do that little trick. See if it leaks tonight. Next day, no leaks detected. Our fix worked.